Hello, my name is Bruce Armstrong, and this is a presentation on identifying and filtering out fake news. And I am affiliated with the Senior Computer Tech Center in Longmont, Colorado, and it's a part of the Longmont Senior Center offerings. And this is the same presentation that I give on Zoom calls to those who sign up for it, but just in case there are people that want to just look at it online, I'm preparing a video without any participants, just with me to give you the presentation. So let's get started here. I'm going to share my screen a little bit here and we'll get going. Okay, this is my depiction of Sherlock Holmes looking for the truth here. And a particular quote that I've carried with me for many years is, everyone is entitled to his own opinions, but not to his own facts. And that's something I've tried to live by, even though I never really had much knowledge of Daniel Patrick Moynihan when he was a senator from the state of New York. But it is a very appropriate statement to me. And there's also a Bible quote, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. So anyway, let's get started here and get going on this presentation. First, I've got a cartoon here that I'd like to share. Dilbert's one of my favorite ones. Occasionally he comes up with some pretty good ideas. I can't tell the difference between good ideas and bad ones. There are smart people on both sides of every idea. What rational process do you use to determine who's right? And Wally says, I label people who disagree with me idiots and call it a day. And that's kind of the way things are going right now. As we just got finished an election, and there's a lot of things hurled back and forth between sides about who was telling the truth and who was fake. And we're kind of used to that with politicians, but I think it's been particularly egregious in the last election. Now, I want to show a couple of videos to start off with. This one was prepared by a university in Australia, where they were trying to give us an idea of how people fake videos. There's no speaking on this, it's all just music. So I'll play the short video first. Now let's continue on here. The next video that I have here is one that the Washington Post put together, which has some things that we need to do. They use the number of Pinocchios to determine whether something's false or true or partly true or whatever, and they count how many Pinocchios it is. But this is a little video they put together on information or disinformation.
If a picture is worth 1,000 words, video can be even more valuable. While in the past, citizens couldn't be sure a politician was telling the truth,
well, I'm not a crook.
they could trust the words captured on camera that were said to begin with.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
But seeing isn't always believing anymore. Glenn didn't just say that, I did. False and misleading videos are circulated online, spread by politicians, advocacy groups, and others, and they're often viewed millions of times. As the technology to manipulate video advances, there's even more urgency to understand what's real and what's fake.
The fact checker set out to develop a universal language to hold creators and sharers of misleading video accountable. This guide is intended to start a conversation,
to equip you with a new awareness and a set of skills to detect fake video.
We've grouped manipulated videos into 3 broad categories. The first category is missing context. The video is unaltered, but is presented in a way that lacks or misstates the context in which events occurred. Misrepresentation is using incorrect framing of a video that misleads the viewer. For example, Trump campaign advisor Katrina Pearson shared this video to represent rockets being fired in Gaza, but it was really filmed in Belarus, 2,000 miles away. Isolation is sharing a brief clip from a larger video, creating a false narrative. Like when conservatives shared that snippet of Representative Ilhan Omar, making it sound like she downplayed the 9/11 attacks.
Far too long, we have lived with the discomfort of being a second-class citizen. And frankly, I'm tired of it, and every single Muslim in this country should be tired of it. CARE was founded after 9/11. Because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
If the quote or video isn't being reported by multiple verified news outlets, it might be missing some important context. The second category is the deceptive edit. That means a video has been edited or rearranged. Omission is editing out large portions of a video to skew reality. A liberal activist group shared this edited video of Senator Dianne Feinstein speaking to children about climate change that makes her look cruel and dismissive.
We have our own Green New Deal.
Some scientists have said that we have 12 years to turn this around.
Well, it's not going to get turned around in 10 years. What we can do.
Splicing is editing videos together to fundamentally change the story. Like when this conservative news outlet combined 2 different interviews of then Democratic congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, changing the meaning behind her answers.
Do you have any knowledge whatsoever about how our political system works? Yikes.
If there seem to be gaps or unexplained transitions in a video, it may have been intentionally edited. The third category is malicious transformation. The video has been manipulated to transform the footage itself. Doctoring is altering the frames of a video, cropping or changing the speed using Photoshop, dubbing audio, or adding or deleting visual information in order to deceive the viewer. For example, this video of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was slowed down to make her look drunk.
Sort of visuals that obviously were planned long before I said most currently. With all this sort of visuals that obviously were planned long before I said most currently.
Fabrication is using artificial intelligence to make high-quality fake images. This includes deepfakes, like the video of Mark Zuckerberg created using artificial intelligence to make him say things that he never said.
Whoever controls the data controls the future.
Inconsistencies around someone's face, like weird coloring or blurring, as well as limited or no blinking, could mean it's a deepfake video. If someone's voice sounds a little low, or their hands are moving too quickly, or their face just looks off, the video might have been manipulated. By labeling these types of video, we hope to create awareness that not all video shared online can be taken as a fact. We expect this list will grow as new categories of false video emerge. Online users should show more skepticism before believing that a viral video really happened. And politicians and public figures have a responsibility to be more careful about what they share on their social media feeds. As technology develops, these videos will only become more and more common and more convincing.
To speak on behalf of the American people and to address their concerns, their hopes, and their dreams.
So if you see something weird on your Twitter feed or Facebook or Instagram, don't hesitate to email us.
Well, that kind of gets us started here. So let's get on. What are we going to talk about today? I'm going to give you a little bit of background of things that are going on and what sources do we trust and do we care about the truth? That's pretty important in this whole discussion, is that many people really are in their own little bubble and they don't want to hear something that's contrary to their truth. And being that this is a presentation primarily directed at seniors, we seem to be most guilty about keeping filter bubbles going around us. We want to talk a little bit about news source bias, and that there is the news sources that we have are diverse and they are multiple and they give us all kinds of different bias. And social network posts, do we trust those? What about print news today? What's the relevance of that? And online news sources, there's hundreds of them. And then what is happening to your privacy? And then maybe in the end, what we should do about it. This is a little bit of information that kind of is a smattering of some of the research that I've done. But several news accounts say that Facebook deleted over 5 billion fake accounts in 2019. All of these fake accounts are spam ad campaigns, which you're probably used to seeing on any social media that you may use, and specifically false information. A lot of that comes from foreign countries. There are some maligning groups of spies, if you will, that are in foreign countries that are inundating things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And this list keeps growing. Pinterest, LinkedIn, TikTok is a recent one in the news, and then one called Parler, which is a new one on the front in my mind, but it's one that's risen as people want more and more, I'd say, radical views that they support. Then this acronym is kind of good that I put in here, FLIC, fake experts, people that they throw out there that they act like they're a fake psychologist or a fake a doctor or a lawyer or whatever when they're not really. And they may not be an expert in the field that they're saying things about. Logical fallacies, you see things out there that are just not logical. Yeah. Why would you support something if it's just not something that's really realistic or logical? Impossible expectations, impossible expectations of our leaders and our people that we deal with. Cherry picking, that's always been a problem with news sources, but it seems to have gotten worse in recent years. And another one that's it's always been around, but it's something that's been talked about a lot recently, conspiracy theories. Groups like this QAnon that has developed in our country in recent years that has some really interesting conspiracy theories. Back in 2016, the Cambridge Analytica scandal was something that they got caught basically harvesting personal information out of social media to use to sell to political candidates. So here's a district that has these likes and dislikes, and that's something that goes along with the one in red following here, social media marketing of everything we look at, click on, and share. That they do. They know how long we looked at a video. They know how long, whether we read something. They know whether we responded to it. A lot of things, and that really defines a lot about who we are. And they sell that information to people. And Cambridge Analytica was one that kind of got caught selling to the highest bidder and doing some interesting things of selling information that shouldn't have been sold. Then we've got foreign actors. I've read several accounts. There's one listed here from the Brookings Institute of how their intent is not to overtake us militarily or anything at the time. Their intent is to sow chaos in our world and to pit us one against each other in the society, and they've been very successful at that. Whoops, let me get back. I hit the wrong button. And Twitter has banned some types of political ads. This is a changing environment. Over this, they keep changing what they've done. And in this last election, they've attempted to try things like putting little notices up there that say this information may not be accurate, or this information may incite violence or whatever. And they've tried to be some sort of a censor. And it's a balance between First Amendment rights and people that are basically inciting bad behavior. And when is it that the power of the police or the FBI or whoever has to jump in and say, "Hey, look, this is inciting something not good." And I think this changes a lot, and I think it's going to change in the future. And I'm not sure whether our political leaders can get their their proverbial acts together to come up with a bipartisan solution to this issue, but I'm sure we'll be hearing about it in the future. Now, a lot of these things we're familiar with. I don't even want to answer the phone anymore sometimes. I have a phone in the kitchen that doesn't have caller ID on it. And, I have certain things I answer and say hello. And if I don't get a response within a second or two, I just hang up. But if I do have caller ID and I don't recognize the number, I don't answer it. So there's a whole lot of phone calls that might be important. I don't know. If they do, I figure they'll leave a message. But should I share a Facebook video, or a Twitter video, or an Instagram video picture, or whatever that you think is particularly cute, or whatever? What kind of things does that do? Should you take one of those little quizzes that they throw out on social media? Should you click on a link in an email or at something on a social media? Should you go to some place that you really don't know where it is? And reposting a video that supports your political or religious beliefs. That, if anybody's ever done that, you know what kind of backlash you get from your friends and neighbors who don't agree with you. One of those local ones, it's called Nextdoor. It's a social media thing for people to kind of get along with their neighbors and have garage sales and to find lost dogs and cats and to talk about school issues or new people to town. Who do they get to repair their automobile or whatever? Some of those, once in a while, somebody will post something that's inherently political or religious or something, and it's amazing how quickly that blows up into 50 or 100 responses going back and forth and saying bad things about each other. And then the bottom one here is the one that I've even heard people say, should I just give up because everything is fake news? Well, I'm not one that does that. I want to test everything out and see if it's true. What do seniors have to worry about? The most recent story I've found is that older people are 7 times more likely to share fake news and more likely to share it. I don't know why I had that twice. Anyway, that was a story from the LA Times. I've heard some really big numbers. Falsehoods are 70% more likely to be retweeted in Twitter than true stories. So people really pick up on the false stories and, oh yeah, I'll send that to my friends or whatever. And again, I'll repeat this several times through here. Social media feeds you more of what you click on, look at, or read. They and their clients all have motives. I like golden retrievers, dogs, and they have a now I get multitudes of golden retriever videos on my social media. And that's harmless, I suppose. But if you start clicking on things, these social media folks know what you're looking at, and they either push advertisements to you if that's what they're looking for to sell, or they are just essentially trying to figure you out for politics purposes or for, um, I don't know, to find out what you do. But it's all to try to get you hooked on something. And I think I've had people disagree with me on this subject. I said seniors are typically less susceptible to changing long-held opinions and therefore more prone to believe fake news they like, uh, because we used to trust our news sources. And, we grew up in the days of Walter Cronkite and Harry Reasoner and Huntley Brinkley and all that kind of stuff, where we had the fairness doctrine and everybody gave both sides of everything. And, you kind of believe the news. And now we've established our opinions. And I think people disagree with me say that young people have established pretty strongly held opinions too. And therefore they're also prone to believing fake news they like. So where are we now? We're in a stage of the demise of print journalism. I'm sad about that. I like to pick up a newspaper and read it. I like a physical newspaper. I don't like to read it on my laptop, and I don't like to read it in any other form on the internet. But with the rise of the internet and 24-hour cable news channels, you got your choice of stuff. And as I said, there were news sources we used to trust, but the fairness doctrine is gone. There was a thing called the fairness doctrine. I can't remember exactly when that was put into effect, but it was in effect all through my childhood, which was many years ago. And the fairness doctrine was that actually there were three networks at my recollection: ABC, CBS, and NBC back in the old days, and they were required to give both sides of every issue. And along came things like cable TV, where you got CNN and you got some other news channels coming on, and people were able to watch BBC or something like that. And it was decided during the Reagan administration that we don't need that anymore. We've got enough competition out there. People can look at what they want. Now, that may have been a good thing and may not, but it disappeared completely. I think the last vestiges of it was during the Obama administration, when they actually extracted it out of the Federal Register, and so it didn't belong. It wasn't there anymore. So there is no fairness doctrine anymore. We've got a whole bunch of social networks, and I'm sure this list is longer than what I have: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, TikTok, and I added Parler, which is one, Parler, that has arisen in recent months. It's a lot of the extremely dedicated viewers of Fox News have gotten a little upset with that Fox News is actually trying to do some more fair and balanced, is what they claim to be. So a lot of these people have graduated to Parler, where their sort of radical views are not censored, and they can say anything they want. Which, I don't know. I'm not going to make a comment about that. The marketing of your personal information. Face it, everything we do online, they know what we're doing. Everything we buy, everything we look at. If I go look at lawnmowers for the next month, I'm going to see lawnmowers in my ads on internet searches. You start doing browser searches. Be kind of careful with this. You got, I don't know, whether you use Edge or Safari or Chrome or whatever as a browser. When you start searching for things, if you've noticed, they look ahead and they know what you looked for before, and they finish out your words for you and try to think ahead of what you what you're going to ask for. So you're kind of directed into acting like they think you're going to act. So browser searchers are something that they have a lot of knowledge about you. And there's a lot of bias and lack of trust in journalism. And one of the things that I recommend is doing your own fact checking, and we'll talk about some ways we can do that. Emails and robocalls. As I said, I don't even want to answer the phone anymore. I was in the business for most of my career in telecommunications, and it was sort of the until and unless the telephone providers cooperate and can figure out a way to make money out of it, they're not gonna get rid of the robocalls. It's going to be with us for a long time. And then we've got this overarching thing of distrust and polarity in the world, that it's not just the United States, but all the countries have this distrust of our leaders, and polarity, that I'm right and you're wrong kind of thing. So, not to be too pessimistic. Anyway, this is something I found that I really like. It's a media bias chart, and it's free to anybody that wants to look at it. And I'm going to go to the site and show you a couple of things that you can do. It's an interactive thing, and when you look at this chart the first time, it's fairly confusing and it's very busy. But let me kind of explain it. Is that you're the x-axis across the bottom here is the political bias. Is this news source biased to the left or to the right? Blue or red, if you want, that sort of thing. And 0 in the middle is no bias. And then the y-axis going up the side here on the left is the bottom is less reliable, and overall reliability, and then more reliable. And if you look at the actual thing, the chart, it's got a green box around here on the top, which they say is most reliable for news. And you might be able to pick some things out. We'll do some specifically in a minute. The orange one or yellowish one below it is the reliable for news, but high in analysis and opinion. I think a lot of people like a lot of opinion, some don't. Then you get into the bigger one here, and it says some reliability issues or extremism. And then this bottom one, this really, really red one, is that serious reliability issues and or extremism. So you've got this thing, and it over here, when you go to this site, you can pick a news source and say, I'll pick National Review here. It's one of it's always been considered a conservative leaning newspaper or news source. And if you look at it, all the little dots represent different people's opinions of where they lie in this matrix. And the average is right here in the middle. And so it looks like that it's kind of in this slightly center right of political bias, and it's down from the green part into where there's a lot of opinion in it. So let's get rid of National Review, and I'll pick one. Here's one. Vox tends to be a slightly left-leaning news source, and it shows up just a little bit left of center. And it still is below the level here of absolutely fact reporting, and it has a lot of opinion in it. Now let's get to here's the New York Times. Well, a lot more people gave their opinions on the New York Times, and it tends to sit, you can barely see the name, but it tends to be just barely left of center, but it's up more in the news category, the accurate news, than anybody else. Now, if we pick Breitbart News, which is, well, let me get New York Times out of there. Breitbart, I see a wide dispersion of people's opinions about this, but the average is that it's a fairly right-leaning organization. It's kind of in the middle here about opinion and reliability and newsworthiness. And so it's a really good thing sometimes to look at for a particular one that you're interested in, and you can just type the name in here and see the one that you want. So that's one that I think is a really valuable thing, is knowing your news sources and whether they have any sort of a bias. So this is a chart that we can use. Now, this is a question that I wish I had a good answer for. It's why do we cling to beliefs threatened by facts? And I have Jack Nicholson here. If you remember the movie, where he says, you can't handle the truth, you want the truth, you can't handle the truth. Well, I'm beginning to think that that's an almost a given in our society today, is that people have their own truth and they don't want to come outside their own truth bubble. They only want to hear things that subscribe to what they believe. And so why do we cling to those beliefs? Why are we threatened by the facts? And there's a number of people that have given some opinions on this, and I'll say this is an opinion, and I've got there's a source on this, is that some people hold a core belief that is very strong. When they're presented with evidence that works against that belief, the new evidence cannot be accepted. It will create a feeling that is extremely uncomfortable, called cognitive dissonance. You may have heard that term before. And because it is so important to protect the core belief, they will rationalize, ignore, and even deny anything that doesn't fit in with the core belief. And so many of my friends or relatives have this issue if they're ever challenged upon their facts. Here's another one. When a news story, a social media post, or a written op-ed spurs us to become angry or emotionally involved, the author or authors have gotten our attention, either to be for or against something. But when we get angry or emotionally involved, we tend to accept the information as true without first investigating whether it is misinformation, which to me is information like some of those fake uh, sort of edited videos where they just pick and choose, cherry pick the information. But disinformation is the one that's a thing where they actually are trying to give you misinformation, politically polarizing information, and then always everyone's trying to strategically manipulate us in some way or shape. This little cartoon is particularly interesting to me. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and was there during the time when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and I recall all of the conspiracy theories that arose following that, and still go on today. But these guys, these old, I call them old, they're contemporaries maybe. The mob did it. The CIA did it. LBJ did it. The Cubans did it. Dallas Junior League did it. But then one guy says, "So who do you think killed JFK?" And the nurse says, "I read on the internet. Obama did it." So, conspiracy theories are something that we are living with, and some of them are so wild that I have trouble understanding how people will subscribe to them. But why do people subscribe to them? What are they? Where do they originate from? And why do they latch on to these when they're so irrational or so wild stories about a happening? There's a lot of examples that you could come to. Now, I sort of made connection with some of the researchers at the University of Washington early on in this project, in that they have done a lot of research in so-called filter bubbles or echo chambers. And they were stressing information that they were able to get from Twitter on conversations about the hashtag Black Lives Matter and the shooting events in 2016. And they put together some valuable research. And what this chart shows you is that the political left, the green on the left side here, are instances where people have retweeted something about Black Lives Matter that is politically left, which was in support of the Black Lives Matter actions and ideas in about 2016. And so they're all sort of patting each other on the back about the Black Lives Matter thing. And then you go over in the political right, those people are all patting each other on the back about disagreeing with it or thinking that Black Lives Matter is something different. It's something that's more violence and more overthrow of the government and that sort of thing. So you see that there's very little overlap between the greens and the red, blue, pinks on the right. They talk only within their own filter bubble. And there's another instance that University of Washington did that I thought was also very interesting, is that the Russian IRA, which is their Internet Research Association, had a whole lot of fake accounts on Twitter back in 2016. They probably still do. But not only were they not talking to each other, the Russian spies, I call them, were purposely encouraging the left-leaning people to dislike the right-leaning people, and the right-leaning people were encouraged to dislike the left-leaning people. So they were providing chaos. And you've seen this kind of thing happening where people get pitted against one another and they have their own little filter bubbles, and they may not be caused by people that are actually have opinions on there, but they may be a purposeful thing on the part of the Russians in this case. So this is a big question too. If we're truly searching for facts about an issue, what can we do? And this is, believe me, folks, this is a lot of work because it takes time and effort to sort through an issue. Say you hear an issue and you want to know what to do. Well, this SIFT method is something that I got, I think, through our University of Washington folks, and I found it just something really good for me to remember. And it's the SIFT, stop. Stop, be a thinker. You know, don't just accept something if it sounds a little fishy, or if the video looks a little fishy, or if the, you know, did that person really say that? Or is that conspiracy theory something I can believe? Stop for a minute. Don't just accept it and move on. So that's probably our biggest problem, is if we don't stop and do that. Second, investigate the source. Find out, look it up. I hesitate to say do a Google search, but yeah, you can do a Google search. And sometimes you can find, where did this quote come from? Where did this picture come from? Where did this idea come from? And see if you can find better coverage. A lot of times you'll do a Google search on a particular story, and you will see the first 10 pages of that on the Google search are coming from the same exact source. So find out what that source is. Can you find better coverage? Do a Google search that's not with the exact words, but see if you can find disagreeing opinions on that, or corroboration of that particular issue. And then do a little more work. The T part on the end is a little more work. Was trace the claims, the quotes, and the media back to the original context. See if you can find, did supposedly Abraham Lincoln say this, or did John F. Kennedy say this? Was it truly something that it's been attributed to him through all of these current social media, but is it something that they really said? And you might be surprised sometimes that most of those things are false. Now, the next thing that I want to go through is this is a little more detail. Bet the publisher's credibility. When you see a story online or in print or whatever, do they have academic standards? Do they have a domain name, an internet place that you can look at? Can you go to the media bias thing and find the point of view of the publication itself? Is there an author? So many times recently, I'll see an inflammatory piece and it'll have a statement and there's no author, there's no attribution who actually wrote this. So you've got to kind of look at some things, first of all, to say, what about the publisher's credibility? The second thing is quality and timeliness. Is the grammar appropriate? I'm a grammar nut, and spelling and grammar mean something to me. And if somebody doesn't take the time to fix their spelling and lets their computer fix their spelling incorrectly, I have no faith in what they're doing. Is it a current story, or is it something that's been recycled from 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Check out the sources. If they have sources in there, are they real? If the quotes are real. I know that when we wrote papers in school, that if you didn't have a citation that was searchable by our professor or our teacher, you got bad grades. You had to source your citations and information. And then when all else fails, we've got several things you can look at. Snopes.com website, factcheck.org, politifact.com. You can look at all three of them or one of them. I've come to trust Snopes as being one of the easier ones to get information on the story and the truth or the not untruth of the story. And I've also got an issue that something called NewsGuard, which you can get as an add-on to your browser. It says it's available for all of the browsers: Edge, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, and you just have to search that out. But what it does is it gives you an indication. Say if I looked up a story and it was with the New York Times, for example, and I went to that website, the NewsGuard app that's embedded in my Edge browser is going to give a little green shield for a source that typically provides all of their standards for news reporting. And then but if it comes up red, that means they don't subscribe to the standards. You can, and if you see that little red shield on there, you can go and the little drop down comes down and you see what they don't do. So that's something that's really a good thing to put if you can get it. I know it's free on Microsoft Edge, and you can just do a search to say, how do I install NewsGuard application? So now, what is fake news? That's a term that, some of the researchers, I know the University of Colorado has a group of people that are doing this, and they don't like the term fake news. And I don't particularly like it either, because it's come to be a politically charged thing that people just say, oh, that's fake news. Anything they say about me is fake news. Well, in my mind, what is fake news? It's deliberate misinformation or disinformation, false headlines. I don't know how many times, countless times I've looked at a headline and then I read the article and I think, how did they get that headline out of that article? So social media sharing, boy, that goes on all the time. People are really quick to share stuff that's not correct. And in red here, I got satire. That there's The Onion has been a favorite satire newspaper for years, where they make up stories. I think this movie, this Borat or whatever his name is, has done some satire stuff. Saturday Night Live does satire, but a lot of people will take that stuff and take it as gospel truth. There are fake websites out there. You might see something that says, oh, this is CNN. That's probably true. And then you look at the website and it's not CNN.com, it's CNN.co or something not the same. And they've faked it to look like CNN. We've got a lot of foreign actors trying to do us bad things. So this was something that I learned a long time ago, that there were, when this particular research was done, there were approximately 800,000. Well, I can't remember the number, but let's say 800 million valid Facebook accounts. And there were more than twice that number of fake accounts on Facebook. So watch your step when you're looking at that stuff. And the foreign bots are really good at that. This word clickbait is something, it's mainly an advertising thing where they will, you take a personality test or something, and it may be something just to find out your wants and your desires in advertising, but it also may be something to get the information to try to hack your passwords by finding out what your mother's maiden name was, or where you grew up, or your favorite first car, or all that kind of stuff. And then we've all seen email scamming, and too many times I've had to work with seniors who have had accidentally or trustworthy clicked on something on an email, and they'd end up with their computer being locked or destroyed, or ransoms being demanded, and those sorts of things. So there's a lot of stuff going on out there that could be called fake news. Now, here's just an example that I found. I just copied this. It says, "Where did you grow up?" And favorite color, pets' first names. And anyway, just going all these things that stop giving people your personal information to guess your password and security questions. So we have to be more careful, especially we seniors who, we're not as familiar with this. And then to kind of end this thing out, I've got Alfred E. Newman, the old Mad Magazine strange kid, with his favorite statement, "What me worry?" Well, I do worry. And the reason I worry is because I do search for the truth, and I realize that searching for truth anymore doesn't just mean doing a Google search only for the things we already believe or think. Google already knows more about you and provides answers reflecting what it knows. It's going to give you an answer that's shaped on what it knows about what you're looking for. And the second one here is one that I find interesting in people, is that most people don't accept correction. If you tell somebody they're in the wrong lane or something, you all of a sudden you got road rage. But we don't accept correction easily. But if we're ever going to survive in a democratic republic, we're going to have to start accepting correction when we find out our preconceived ideas are not correct. The next thing is, if you're on social media, just be prepared that you're being fed what piques your interests and not necessarily what might come from a true search. After some diligent effort and open-minded research, you will be better equipped to know generally what sources can be trusted. That you can pick your favorites. I like to pick a few favorites. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but some that give me opinions on one side of an issue and some that give me opinions on the other, and I sort through those by listening to people that I trust on both sides. And you've got to understand that social media is a big business. It's being funded by huge advertising, and your interactions are fully recorded to push more things to you that you should have shown an interest in. And this last thing is pretty important. Your life may depend on your ability to find the truth. We're suffering through a pandemic virus right now, and there's a lot of erroneous information being thrown out. There's a lot of speculative information, but there is a lot of truth being sent out there, and you've got to be able to sort through it because your life may depend upon it. Well, that's all I have, and unfortunately, it is something that I can't do on this thing, is ask for questions from anyone. So anyone has questions, they should be able to find our website and get questions answered. Well, thank you.